Hi, folks. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism. I wanted to talk today about two interrelated topics. The first is heterodox Maoism. The second is socialism from below, third worldism. Why do I use those terms? Okay. Let's start with heterodox Maoism. The word heterodox, or heterodoxy, is made up of two Latin roots. The prefix hetero is the same prefix that is found in heterogeneous and heterosexual. It means different or other. It does not mean un or non. That's important, and I will explain that in a moment. The second, I guess the suffix, is dox or doxy, which is a Latin suffix that means doctrine. So you put them together and you have different or other doctrine. Simple. It's not unorthodox. It's different doctrine, not non-doctrine or a doctrine or something like that. In other words, it is not a bad term. Heterodoxy are good terms. We should all use them. Well, we should use them if it's appropriate. What it describes is a willingness to go beyond the usual boundaries of thought. Most people are not willing to do that, at least in my experience. Most people stick within the usual boundaries of thought. They don't exceed them at all. I found them in my years working as a college professor, even with other professors, even with other sociologists. Most people know how to toe the line. They don't go beyond the general way in which things are said or done. They stick to the usual approach. I'm not like that. I've never liked that at all. I basically object to the idea of simply looking at things in a conventional way. And heterodoxy can be seen also, in a sense, as unconventionality. It's being willing to behave or think or act in a way that is distinct from the way that most people think and act. That's basically what it is. And so the term heterodox Maoism makes perfect sense because basically the only real orthodox Maoism was the Maoism of Mao Zedong himself, Chairman Mao himself. That was the original Maoism of Mao. Mao was the founder of Maoism, obviously, but Mao was not a heterodox Maoist. He was Mao. I guess you could say he was the orthodox Maoist, maybe the only orthodox Maoist, or at least he was the founder of orthodox Maoism. Have I gotten you confused enough? Well, basically, in a simple way, heterodox Maoism means different doctrine approached in relationship to Maoism. And that is what I'm interested in doing, because what I am suggesting here is an approach to Maoism, which we'll get into in just a bit, which is not the usual approach, which is not conventional, and which was not used by Mao himself. Mao was not, again, a heterodox Maoist. How could he be? He was Mao. He was not heterodox himself. Maybe he was heterodox about some things. Maybe he was heterodox about his eating habits. Maybe he was heterodox about his reading habits. Maybe he was heterodox about the kinds of plays that he went to. Did Mao go to plays? I don't know. But he wasn't heterodox about Maoism because he was Mao. And the people who followed him originally, the Maoists, were orthodox Maoists, meaning they towed the line. They followed what Mao said. Now, am I saying that's a bad thing? No, not necessarily a bad thing, but I would simply say that the Maoism of Mao is antiquated, meaning it does not really fit the needs of the 21st century. It might have fit the needs of the time of Mao, when Mao lived, when there was a mainland China, before the Cultural Revolution, which was a disaster, but it does not really fit the needs of the time in which we are living. So it makes no sense to simply try to replicate what Mao did and to call ourselves Maoists in the sense that Mao used it in a strict or exact sense. Rather, it makes sense to update Maoism because Marxism has gone through many, many, many stages. And arguably, the latest of those stages is a type of heterodox Maoism. Okay, now, second part, what is that type of heterodox Maoism? Generally, it is referred to as Maoism third worldism. Clever, eh? Well, I didn't make it up, so don't compliment me. It's not for me. I had no part in making up the term, but I like it. It's a nice term. It works. It explains exactly what it's talking about. First, you have Maoism, the ideas of Mao roughly, but then you have third worldism. Mao talks about the third world, but he was not a third worldist. Third worldism explicitly in Maoism is the idea that revolutions need to start in the third world. And it's not because the first world is necessarily bad, even though it is, but because the first world is not really ready for revolution. There really is not sufficient dialectical or revolutionary potential in the first world. And so it's necessary right now that revolutions occur in the third world, I think, or I hope, or I dream. The problem is right now, there really are no genuine leftisms anywhere in the world. Now, is that a slight exaggeration? I guess it's a slight exaggeration, but not by much. We don't see that many revolutions occurring in the 21st century. We've seen a couple, but not that many. If anything, I would say the world is drifting more in a fascist direction than in a Marxist direction or a communist direction. Donald Trump is an example of that, for example, but there are many other examples as well. Fascism, or the authoritarian right, the authoritarian ultra-nationalist right, seems to be the mood of the time. That seems to be where most people, well, maybe not most people, but a lot of people are thinking. A lot of people seem to like fascism. A lot of people are attracted to fascism. I'm not. I think fascism is a really bad idea, which is why I'm Antifa. And Antifa, anti-fascism. So I don't like fascism. And the first world is very, very fascist, especially especially the United States, we are the king of fascism. We lead the world. We lead the first world, and we lead the first world in fascism. So that is third worldism, or is it? I guess. Third worldism, again, the idea that communism, communist revolution, or if you prefer, socialist revolution, will begin not in the first world, which can also be called the empire or the American empire, but it will begin in the third world, or in other words, in the developing world, in countries like, well, for example, Mexico. I mention Mexico because Mexico is just 2 miles from me. Aren't you tired of hearing that? I know I am. I say it too much, but Mexico is really, really close. I can be there in just a couple of minutes. Now, would I want to go to the part of Mexico that's right near me? No. Why? Because there's nothing there, just woods, just woods. There's nothing really to see in the part of Mexico right near me. Really, the part of Mexico which has all the action is Reynosa. But Reynosa is kind of dangerous. And so I really would not want to spend much time in Reynosa. It's okay to go there occasionally, but hanging out there, probably not a good idea. You may get your head cut off. And I don't want to get my head cut off, especially not slowly. And that's what commonly happens in Reynosa and in many other parts of Mexico because of the domination of the drug cartels. Have I bored you already? Okay. So the part of Mexico to go to around here anyway, in the Rio Grande area, the Rio Grande River Valley, is Nuevo Progreso. Nuevo meaning new, and Progreso, I guess, meaning progress. So new progress, the new land of progress. That is Nuevo Progreso. Now, right across the Rio Grande River from Nuevo Progreso is a town called Progreso in the United States. So, but the difference is that Progreso in the United States is spelled with two S's. Progreso in Mexico, or I should say Nuevo Progreso in Mexico, is spelled with only one S. Who cares? It really doesn't matter. Okay, now what I have done is I have taken Maoism, third worldism, which is a fine term, and I have combined it with socialism from below, a very widely used designation, which is really more of a description of what Marxism is. I mean, I think really by definition, Marxism, or if you wish, socialism, scientific socialism, is socialism from below, meaning it's socialism started by the proletariat and hopefully, from my perspective, also by the subaltern, the marginalized members of society or the othered members of society. I hope that the subaltern, a term coined by the Italian Marxist communist Antonio Gramsci, will actually be a part of the revolution. I would like to see that happen, or the revolutions, but we haven't gotten there yet. Why? Because we are still living under the domination of the first world, or as Immanuel Wallerstein calls it, the capitalist world system, a world system which is dominated by capitalism, and the center or the heart of capitalism in the world is the United States. There are other places in the world which are capitalist as well, but I would say no place is quite as capitalist as we are. And by we, I mean Americans. And I'm not proud of that. That's not something I like. I have an ongoing argument with a friend of mine who is a capitalist, but she says, well, I don't support modern capitalism, meaning I don't support free market capitalism, or I don't support, as she calls it, unfettered capitalism. I support the capitalism of Adam Smith. The problem is, what is the capitalism of Adam Smith? It's never existed. It's a book, Wealth of Nations, and a few other books the guy wrote, but it's never actually been implemented. So how can you support something that doesn't exist? Well, I guess I'm supporting something that doesn't exist too, since Maoism, Third Worldism doesn't exist as well, but at least Maoism, Third Worldism is good. Capitalism, including the capitalism of Adam Smith, the Wealth of Nations, is not good. Why? Because Adam Smith said that people are naturally greedy. That's what he said. And therefore, capitalism is a perfect economic framework to use with people who are naturally greedy. Well, I guess that makes sense if you believe that, except I don't. I don't believe that. So I don't want to be a capitalist. And yet this friend of mine insists on it all the time. She really, really loves capitalism. And I hate it. But I like her anyway. She's a nice person to talk with. Okay. Let's get back to the topic. The term that I use, socialism from below, third worldism. Why have I chosen that term? In my framework, which I call Eudaimonic Utopia, that's the title of the book, I had two separate categories among other categories. One was called socialism from below, which I later changed to communism from below, but either way is okay. And the other was what we just talked about, Maoism, third worldism. I decided that rather than keep them as two separate categories, I would collapse them into a single category. And that is how I came up with the term socialism from below, third worldism. Pretty simple, eh? Okay, I think it's pretty simple. So we still have the idea that socialism should begin with the workers and with the marginalized people of society, hopefully. That remains. That remains. That is socialism from below. In a sense, you really don't need the below part because socialism from below implies from below. But unfortunately, when some people talk about socialism, they're talking about something entirely different, like the kind of elite system which exists, say, in, I don't know, some forms of democratic socialism or some forms of even social democracy, like Bernie Sanders or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, who really are social democrats, even though they call themselves democratic socialists. They're not really democratic socialists, but I really don't care since I'm not one either. I'm a communist or a socialist from below. So again, I've taken the socialism from below and I've combined it with Maoism, third worldism, but I've chopped off Maoism, not because I dislike Maoism. I use the term heterodox Maoism, but simply for simplicity. I've taken out the word Maoism, and I now just call it socialism from below, third worldism. Hopefully that was simple, but if it was not, I'm sorry. I will try to do better in the future. For now, this is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D. for the Dialectical Meta-Realist Institute. Have a pleasant day and an even better day tomorrow.